Hi, everybody. Welcome to our program. It's English Digest, and I'm Tom.
Hey, I'm Stephanie.
If you are planning to be an architect, you might want to study the work of this fella from Austria whose name is Friedensreich Hunterwasser. I hope I said that right. And he's an architect who hated straight lines.
Yeah, I had to look his stuff up online. I was curious if you're an architect. There are a lot of straight lines in buildings, right? And I thought, wow, somebody who hates straight lines, why would you become an architect? He just loves nature. He loves rounded things. Looking at his buildings, it looks like he's either on drugs when he's designing or he has a childlike imagination. They look like cartoon homes and cartoon buildings to me, but very interesting. So we're going to spend the time for a program today talking about Friedensreich. And you don't have to learn German to understand us, but his name is kind of crazy, and we will be pronouncing it as close as we can to the German, because even Americans try to pronounce his name with a German flair, I think. So let's get started, guys. We're going to read through today's lesson, and then we'll be back.
Take a look around you. How many straight lines can you count? There are likely so many that you've already given up. To most people, such precisely measured and controlled constructions are normal. For the late artist and architect Friedensreich Hunterwasser, though, straight edges were godless and immoral crimes against nature that made our homes feel as though they were sterile prisons. Hunterwasser instead designed fluid, colorful works and buildings that reveal a widely imaginative idea of what human dwellings could look like. The notable creator was born in Vienna, Austria in 1928 as Friedrich Stowasser. From a young age, he showed a talent for art and deep respect for nature. In the 1940s, while attending art school, he began signing paintings with the surname Hunterwasser. His full adopted name, Friedensreich Regentag Dunkelbunt Hunterwasser, translates directly to Peace, Realm, Rainy Day, Dark-Colored, 100 Water. His art and architecture style, called Trans-automatism, reflected the same colorful vitality as his name and made use of organic swirling lines and shapes. In his creative philosophy, Hunterwasser specified that buildings must be friendly to both humans and nature. He advocated these ideas in several manifestos, including Your Window Right, Your Tree Duty. Hunterwasser asserted that all humans have the right to tear down and modify our living space as we see fit. However, he also stressed that we are guests of nature and therefore must behave as well-brought-up guests by making space for the natural world. These ideas translated into his buildings, such as Hundertwasser House in Vienna. Conceived in the 1950s and built in the 1980s, it uses natural, irregular forms and has large trees growing inside the apartments, along with a roof covered in earth and grass. This idea of transformable nature-incorporating architecture was radical at the time. Today, however, Hundertwasser's principle of humans and nature sharing a living space could help to change our relationship with the natural world in a positive and thought-provoking way.
Let's get started, guys. Now, one of the things that can help you with the pronunciation of names, because all of us need help every once in a while, is to go to YouTube, type the name in the search bar, and then to the side of that, to the right side, type pronunciation, and it'll bring up sites with voices saying how to say that name. Now, some of these sites, as we've discovered, Tom and I have discovered, are robot voices. They are not good. Do not listen to them. they're terrible. A lot of time the 重音 is 错的. So you want to find a real voice. This particular name is German, of course, and there was a really good German website. All he does is pronounce things, but he does it in normal tempo, a little slow, and then fast at the end, like a native speaker would say it. And I thought that was helpful. But it's Friedensreich Hundertwasser. Notice that the W in German is pronounced with a V sound. V. So this is the architect who hated straight lines. So take a look around you. How many straight lines can you count? There are likely so many that you've already given up, especially if you're in a room like we are right now in the recording studio. Everything is a straight line, except for a couple of chairs. There's some rounded edges on them. But yeah, we live in a world with a lot of square lines.
And straight lines, of course, and of course I've heard about this. People who live in cities look at those lines all the time, and I think it's unnatural for people to be looking at so many straight lines because, humanity grew up in the countryside and in the forest and stuff like that with lots of round shapes and curvy lines and stuff like that. So indeed, looking at the buildings in the city might be bad for your health. So indeed, get outside sometimes and go hiking and look at those round shapes of the clouds and the mountains and stuff like that. And maybe Friedensreich Hundertwasser felt the same way. He hated those straight lines. So again, take a look around you. How many lines can you count? Oh, there's so many. I've lost count. And to most people, such precisely measured and controlled constructions are normal. Indeed, if you live in cities, you're used to that. And what's wrong with the straight lines of buildings? Hey, it shows that we're, making a lot of money and we're a progressive country. We've got all these buildings with straight lines, but for Friedensreich Hundertwasser, that was not good. And of course, most people like the straight lines, but for the late artist and architect Friedensreich Hundertwasser, though straight lines and straight edges were godless and immoral crimes against nature that made our homes feel as though they were sterile prisons. So from this sentence, we can tell that Friedensreich Hundertwasser has died. He's no longer with us.
He died in 2000.
Okay, that was quite some time ago, over 20 years ago. So he's a late artist. If anybody's described as late, it means they're dead. So he's gone, but of course his works live on. And he didn't like those straight edges and those straight lines. He thought they were godless, they didn't have any soul, and they were immoral. They didn't have any morals, they were unethical, and they were crimes against nature. And of course, if you have all those lines in your home, it makes the homes feel as though they're sterile prisons. So that sounds kind of bad. If something's sterile, that means it can't reproduce, of course. If an animal is sterile, it can't have children. But it also means it's just really, really clean. All the germs and all the dirt has been cleaned out. And prisons seem kind of cold places with bars and stuff like that. So, yeah, maybe your house does look like a sterile prison with all those straight lines.
If you describe a home as looking very sterile, it's not just clean. It means there's no creativity that you can see. It's unimaginative. It's a very just boring kind of place to live. There are lots of sterile homes. Some people like very modern-looking things, and sometimes those can feel sterile to me. But it depends on your style and your interpretation of what a homey home means. But if it's a sterile environment, it's not just clean, it's just really very uncreative, if you can say that. It's non-creative. So, yeah, he was looking for something that was very full of imagination and fantasy. If you see his buildings, you'll understand why he thinks most of these modern square, straight lines are sterile, like sterile prisons, because he really did live in a fantasy world. So Hundertwasser, instead of designing these straight lines and edges, he designed fluid, colorful works and buildings that reveal a wildly imaginative idea of what human dwellings could look like. I would hate to live in one of his buildings, I'll just be honest.
Okay.
It looks like a bunch of graffitis on the outside to me. But, everybody has a different style. Now, you know what fluid is. It's one of our vocab words. If it's a noun, it's just a liquid, right? But if you describe something using fluid as an adjective, and that's what it's being used as here, it just means something that has no fixed shape, and it can be changed. It's malleable. It isn't always in one set state, so it's able to be changed if it's fluid. I could say my schedule is very fluid. It's never the same from day to day. I have different clients and different jobs every single day, so my schedule is fluid, meaning I don't go to the office from 9 to 5. I have different bosses. I'm my own boss, you could say. So these are colorful works and buildings, and they are very imaginative. And it is interesting that this was his idea of what human dwellings should look like.
Right, they were fluid. I guess you could describe puffy white clouds as being fluid. They change shape all the time.
Yeah.
And so his creations were fluid, and they were colorful, and they revealed a widely imaginative idea of what human dwellings could look like. A dwelling, of course, is a building where someone lives. And we'll come back in just a couple of seconds and continue talking about our featured architect, Friedrich Hundertwasser. Please stay tuned, but right now let's listen to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们今天要来看一个热爱缤纷曲线的童趣艺术家，他是百水先生。这百水先生其实他是奥地利的画家，但是文章呢是把它设计成篇章结构，所以按照篇章结构这样的题型来看，其实我们会先浏览一下选项。那么在浏览选项的时候的重点是要在理解选项的意思，并且先臆测这个选项可能会出现在文章大概哪一个部分的位置。比如说像 A 选项，我们看到的是他自己取了一个全名，然后我们看到4个德文，直译为和平领域、雨天、暗色、白水。好，所以关键其实是在全名这4个德文有什么样的意思。言下之意就是这个选项的上下文啊，应该是在谈这个百水先生他过去或者是他一开始使用了什么样的一个名字来作为作画发表的一个名字，或者他自己可能有取什么样的名字，就是在谈名字这一段的时候应该比较容易出现这样的答案。那么接下来看一下 B 选项。 B 选项呢，我们提到的是百水先生坚称所有人都有权利在我们认为觉得有必要的情况之下拆除改造我们的生活空间。不过这句话我们可能要特别注意一下，因为这句话呢其实最后面有一个 as we see fit， 最后面倒数第4个字的 as 其实是 when， 当我们觉得合适的时候 we have the right，人类就有这个权利。好，所以后面这边的文字呢稍微比较难理解。不过 B 选项这样子的文意通常是在介绍某一个艺术家或者是某一个文学家，他可能有一些个人的理念啦，或者是创作哲学这样的上下文当中比较容易出现这个答案哦。接下来的 C 选项我们来看一下。 C 选项提到这种可变融入自然的建筑理念在当时是非常前卫的。好，首先文意是有点模糊的，什么叫做可变，什么叫做融入自然呢？而且关键是 at that time， C 选项最后面的在当时隐含着是 C 选项的前文一定有提到一个古代的某一个时候，也就是当时在过去会有什么样的一个建筑理念，甚至一个作品。好，最后面 D 选项呢就有提到了 D 选项然而。好，一开始就来一个反转，然而什么呢？对于已故的艺术家百水先生来说，执鞭就是没有灵性、不道德、反抗大自然的很愚蠢的一个行为，让我们觉得好像了无新意耶。好，所以这个然而之后提到的是百水先生很不喜欢执鞭这个东西。那么然而之前呢，文章应该有提有很多的直线，我们可能习惯了，或者是我们甚至觉得直线很好，类似这样子的一个文意。所以其实啊，我们在做这个篇章结构的时候，看到了选项，不管是对于这个选项当中的一些代名词啦，或者一些关键字，例如 however 例如 at that time 要有一些敏感度之外，还要先预测可能出现在文章的大概哪样的文意的段落当中。好，所以我们赶快来回头看一下文章。第一段一开始就告诉我们啦，教我们看看四周，能够数出几条直线呢？而且有可能是因为太多了，我们根本没办法去数。而且重点是我们大多数的人来说啊，其实就是很习惯直线，因为第四句话最后一个字叫做 normal， 觉得这样子 precisely measured 是觉得很正常的，所以它的文意其实刚好就相呼应了。第一题答案应该是 D， 然而对白水先生来说，直边却是不好的。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're talking about a fascinating architect named Friedrich Hundertwasser, and he was Austrian.So he's got a very German name because that's the language that they speak there. And he just had this crazy idea that buildings shouldn't be made up of straight lines. He felt like they should look more like nature. And if you go out into nature, you see lots of curving lines, don't you? So his imagination led him to design some very creative buildings. Some of them are pretty crazy looking. And when I say it looks like someone was on drugs when they designed it, I just mean, someone who's high and came up with some really crazy looking things. But I also think that was a style for a while, especially in the 60s and 70s. He came up with a new style himself. We'll be talking about that in a minute. But he liked fluid, colorful works.And he designed it that way, too. Moving on to paragraph 2, it starts talking about his background. It says the notable creator was born in Vienna, Austria, back in 1928. His birth name was Friedrich Stowasser. Friedrich, of course, is the German name for Frederick in English. So his original name was Friedrich Stowasser. So from a young age, he showed a real talent for art. Cool. A lot of kids do. And he also had a deep respect for nature. He loved nature. And that really had a big influence on how he grew up as a designer. I want to look at this word, though, notable, before we move on. If something's notable, it's noteworthy. Something that you should pay attention to. So he is notable because his designs are really famous, and also he came up with a new style design, you could say. It was a new art and architectural style we'll talk about.
Indeed, and for example, I could say Wuling Farm is notable for its cherry blossoms that lots of people go check out in the winter. And in this particular case, Friedrich Stowasser is notable for his creations, and he was born in Austria in 1928.
Yeah.
And from a young age, he showed a talent for art and a deep respect for nature. In the 1940s, while attending art school, he began signing paintings with the surname Hundertwasser. Artists do this. They change their names. Maybe they don't like their original surname, and so they change their name, and he began to use this surname.
It's his professional name.
His professional name or his family name, calling himself Hundertwasser, which means 100 waters. And his full adopted name, which I guess you can do in Austria, you can call yourself anything you want and go to court and have it changed. And the full name is Friedensreich Regentag Dunkelbunt Hundertwasser. I hope I said that right. I did take a semester of German in high school.
Cool.
And this translates directly to peace realm, rainy day, dark-colored, 100 water. Yeah, I can recognize some German words in there. Tag means day, like Guten Tag, good day. Regen means rain. And Dunkelbunt, of course, means dark-colored. And Hundertwasser, 100 water, etc. So there you have it. How would you like to have a name like that? Hello, my name is Peace Realm, Rainy Day, Dark-Colored, 100 Water, Really nice to meet you.
It kind of sounds like a Native American name. Very descriptive, very much focused in on nature too, right? So, yeah, he came up with his own name. You can change your name in most countries, Tom. Here in Taiwan, we have friends who have changed their name officially with the government.
Yeah, they changed their name to Salmon or something a couple of years ago to get free salmon at a sushi restaurant. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
Well, I'm thinking of someone who wasn't that weird. But a lot of people will change their names in the States as well. And you do it officially, and it becomes your official name on government documents. So his art and architecture style, called transautomatism. Automatism is in the dictionary. Transautomatism is only found on the internet, so you can look that up. It's a modern style of painting that was created or started by this particular artist, Hundertwasser. It's kind of a surrealism. So what you're looking at doesn't reflect what your eyes see. It's not a practical art. It's very fantasy-based. And it's also very important for the viewer, the person who is viewing the art, to decide what that art means. So different people see different things in the same picture, and that's what he wanted. But he definitely tends to lean towards fantasy and surrealism in his art and architecture.
Indeed, and of course this style, transautomatism, reflected the same colorful vitality as his name and made use of organic swirling lines and shapes.
Spirals. He loves spirals and drops.
Exactly. That's what swirling is. If you look at that Van Gogh painting, Starry, Starry Night, of course, we've got swirling lines of the stars of the Milky Way galaxy. And here we've got the word vitality, and that just means strength or life of something. So, of course, it reflects the vitality of his name. And yes, indeed, I guess it lives up to his name. With a name like that, you better produce some pretty far-out art. And he did that.
He did.
And here in the next paragraph it says, in his creative philosophy, Hundertwasser specified that buildings must be friendly to both humans and nature. So that's his creative philosophy, and he was very specific here. He told us the details. He specified that buildings must be friendly to both human beings and to nature. So here we've got the verb to specify, which means you give the exact information required. You're not vague. You come straight to the point. You express yourself clearly and definitely.
So he advocated or worked hard to support these ideas in several manifestos. A manifesto is a plural form, but a manifesto is just a public declaration of what you believe. And lately, we've been seeing it used more in a negative way. Some of these terrorists who publish their manifestos after they kill people, I don't really care what they believe. But his manifesto, what he believed was your window right, your tree duty. So you have a right to have a window, which I love. I would have a whole house full of windows if I could. And your tree duty, you have a duty to trees. You have, which I love. I love trees too. So Hundertwasser asserted that all humans have the right to tear down and modify our living space as we see fit, or as we think we should. If you assert something, you are making a comment that's quite strong. So you are stating a fact or a belief very confidently, forcefully. You assert something. You claim something. He asserted, and this was his belief, that we have the right to modify our living space as we see fit. We should be able to change the way our dwellings look so that we're happy and that we're at peace with nature, I guess.
And it goes on to say, however, he also stressed that we are guests of nature and therefore must behave as well-brought-up guests by making space for the natural world. Indeed, we have to respect that we belong to nature and we have to let nature into our homes. That's the idea. And these ideas translated into his buildings, such as Hundertwasser House in Vienna. So translating means you try to express one language in another, but it also refers to art or creation. Basically, you give the meaning of something. So he had these ideas, and he expressed those ideas with his buildings. And an example is Hundertwasser House in Vienna.
Right. So it was conceived or thought up in the 1950s, a while back, and built in the 1980s. It uses natural, irregular forms. So the forms that you see are going to be kind of crazy. They're not your typical square, circle, rectangle forms. And has large trees growing inside the apartments. So there's going to be a big need for windows so that those trees get enough light. So along with a roof covered in earth and grass. Oh, that goes back to the olden times when they had, roofs that were made out of straw and things like that, grass even. I've seen some new homes putting grass on top of the roof, which is kind of cool. This idea of transformable, nature-incorporating architecture was radical at the time. Yeah, back then it was kind of crazy. I bet a lot of people thought he was insane. If you're radical, you do things that are quite different from mainstream people or most of the people around you. So it was considered radical, a very big departure from traditional forms. Very, very strange for people at the time.
But now if you own a house that he designed, hey, you could sell it for millions of dollars.
Probably.
And today, however, Hundertwasser's principle of humans and nature sharing a living space could help to change our relationship with the natural world in a positive and thought-provoking way. Provoking here just means it causes something to happen. Hey, did that person provoke you? Did they say something mean to you so you would fight them? And yeah, they called me names, so I hit them back. So that was provocative. It caused you to do something or caused you to have a reaction. So indeed, these works of architecture could have a positive influence, and they could thought-provoke, or they could provoke thoughts for people, and they might go, that's interesting. I'd like to live there with all those plants and those curvy lines.
Right. Someone who definitely is always thought-provoking is our Chinese teacher. Let's listen now.
接着我们就来看第二段咯。第二段一开始就告诉我们，这个著名的创作者其实在1928年出生在奥地利，而且从小就展现出对艺术的天分，还有对大自然的敬意。第二段在第3句的地方，我们看到在艺术学校就读的时候，1940年他就用什么样的姓氏呢？他用他的 surname， 他用他的 last name 在画作上面签名。有一个敏感度哦。这时候我们提到名字，所以接下来的第二题应该要选 A 是没有错的。而他自己取的全名就有一些不同样的含义咯，然后呢就展现出什么样的线条或者是形状类似这样子的所谓的超自动主义。好，接下来的第3段，我们在一开始的第1句看到 creative philosophy，创作哲学，所以这一段应该会包含整个白水先生他自己个人的理念，他创作的哲学有哪些，甚至其实在第3段当中，我们看到了第2句有一个关键字叫做 your window right， 你用窗的权利，这个 right 跟下面第3题答案 B 的这个 right， 大家都有这个权利来去改造拆除我们的生活空间，其实在文意上也是相通的，所以第3题答案要选 B。 好，那么最后当然第4题的答案就是 C 咯。所以这是白水先生，如果你喜欢他的画作的话，也可以在 Google 更多有关于他的资讯哦。我是安娜，我们下次见。
That's it for today, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and please join us again next time. And because we talked about a German-speaking fella from Austria, we should say goodbye in German. So from all of us here at English Digest, ich bin Tom.
Ich bin Stephanie.
Auf Wiedersehen.